So any second now, this will be on the internet. I'm waiting to see. Oh, it says I'm live. Hey, YouTube. It's been a crazy week, right? Okay, so I'm gonna just rip the band-aid off to get started. If you make YouTube videos that primarily feature Lego or any toy of any kind or anything else that is generally in the public imagination considered to be for children, then you need to mark your YouTube videos as for kids. Period. End of story. Asterisk, I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice, but I am pretty knowledgeable about YouTube. I've been doing YouTube for 13 years. And in particular, I've been making content that is for kids the entire time. And I've been thinking about this specific issue, which is YouTube's current situation regarding kids' content and all of that stuff for the last 18 months, really specifically, which is to say, while some of you are just starting to think about this issue as of 3 days ago when the email came from YouTube, I have spent way too much time reading articles about this, going to therapy about this, working with, creators to process all of my feelings and thoughts and emotions about this. I have thought about this a lot. I've basically been leveling up and preparing specifically for right now. And it's terrible. This is bad. This is the biggest change to ever happen to YouTube in its entire history. And it's going to be terrible for a lot of people. And I wish I could tell you something different than that, but that's just the plain, simple truth of what is happening right now. All right, so let's back up a little. So this week, you got an email from YouTube / a notification from YouTube that said, hey, you have a YouTube channel. Guess what? You need to comply with COPPA now. And you're like, wait, what's COPPA? Or COPPA, however you're pronouncing it. I feel like it should be COPPA, just 2 P's. COPPA is more like Copacabana. Anyway, that's a different story, pronunciation. So you got that email and you're like, oh, what? Huh? And then you're like, okay, what does it mean that my content is for kids or not for kids? And that's a great philosophical question we could argue about for years. But here's what it boils down to. So YouTube, this wonderful platform that we are on right now. Hi, YouTube. Hello, chat. I'm not really paying attention to you yet, but people are asking me to build things out of Lego. Unsurprising. That's what I trained my audience to do. Anyway, so we're on YouTube. YouTube is run by Google, which is technically owned by a different entity called Alphabet, which is just a name Google gave itself. Whatever. YouTube hosts videos on the internet, right? That's what's happening right now. And it serves advertisements. So if you are like most YouTube users, you are not a YouTube Premium user, so you see ads when you're on YouTube. Now, depending on what you know about digital advertising, this will either be really obvious or totally new information to you. But digital advertising is a super complex system that relies on massive amounts of data collection. So you, person watching this video, are on YouTube right now. If you got served an ad on this live stream, I don't really know how ads on live streams work, whatever. But if you got served an ad on YouTube, that is based on a multitude of factors. So YouTube knows lots of stuff that Google knows, which means it might know what search term you put in a search engine to arrive on this video. and it takes that information, gives it to companies that want to sell you things, and says like, hey, you want to find people who are searching for buying a new car and they're watching a car video on YouTube, you can sell ads to them. So that personalization is not only the guiding principle of how YouTube makes money, but basically the guiding principle of how most companies on the internet make money, media companies specifically. It's all based on personalized advertising. And so YouTube, Google, they're all collecting all this data every time somebody is on YouTube, whether that person is logged in to an official YouTube account or whether they're just casually browsing. So what does that mean? It means that they're collecting data on everybody in the entire world because everybody watches YouTube, right? And a percentage of those people are children. And for the purposes of the law and this video, children means anybody under the age of 13. So YouTube is collecting data on children because they want to sell ads to everybody on YouTube, and some of those people are children. So that's illegal. That's illegal in the United States, probably in other countries too. So that's illegal because specifically this law called the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act, or COPPA, and it's been illegal for a long time. The law came into effect in 1998. It got changed in 2013, and some of those changes are why it's specifically illegal now. I don't know. I'm not an expert on COPPA, right? But anyway, collecting data on children without explicit consent from their parents to collect data is illegal, which is why most internet services, when you try to create an account or join them, are like, hey, what's your birthday? Are you 13 years or older? Because of COPPA. So anyway, we all know that kids watch YouTube, right? It's just like, if you have observed any children in the last decade, you have seen them watching YouTube on a smartphone or an iPad or a Kindle, whatever. Kids watch YouTube. We all know it. YouTube has known it, and YouTube specifically knew it so much that they even had a category of channels that had premium advertising on them that were specifically kids and family channels. I was one of those channels. I didn't realize it until I was kicked out of the program, but I was in the Google preferred kids and families thing when it existed. So YouTube knew it was breaking the law so much to the point that it had a whole category of law-breaking content that they promoted to advertisers. This is like one of the key points in the whole case that led to the FTC settlement. Again, this is like all legal nitty-gritty stuff, and most of you are like, what does this have to do with Lego, right? I'm getting there. So, the FTC investigates YouTube, has all this evidence of ways that YouTube knew it was collecting data on children, which is illegal, and they're like, hey, we're gonna fine you a bunch of money for all this illegal stuff you've been doing, and you have to stop breaking the law, right? Like, that's how law enforcement works, is not only do you get punished for breaking the law, but generally the goal is to make you stop breaking the law in the future, right? They're not gonna let you continue breaking the law, except that the FTC was like, and YouTube came to an agreement where they're like, YouTube's like, all right, we get it, we broke the law, we'll stop. However, like, it's not exactly our fault, right? People upload whatever they want to YouTube, and we don't know what's for kids and what's not for kids. And it's gonna take a while to make those changes. So let's have a period of time from September to December of 2019 in which we'll still break the law, but we'll make these changes so that everybody on the platform can become compliant. So that's the period we're in now. We're in a weird grace period where the FTC is like, all right, keep breaking the law, keep collecting data on children, but come January 1st, 2020, the law is really going to be an issue. Great. People are asking me for Lego in the chat. You don't get the point of this video. This video is not about Lego. This video is about YouTube and laws and only a little bit about Lego. So, all that stuff happens. And, right, so part of the agreement is YouTube says, okay, here's what we'll do. We will make every single person who uploads a video to YouTube tell us if their video is for kids or not for kids. Because there's no way we could review every video, so we have to rely on individual people to indicate. And then if somebody says this video is for kids, we, YouTube, will not collect data on that video and serve personalized ads because that's illegal. Because otherwise, how would we know? Now, there's so many different ways we could go talking about this, right? Like whether this actually makes sense as a solution to the problem, because YouTube already had this thing called YouTube Kids, an app specifically for kids that is COPPA compliant, that would get around a lot of these issues. But like YouTube Kids has been, poorly implemented from day one, and it's still nowhere near where it would need to be to actually be a place that kids primarily go versus the main YouTube app. So basically the main YouTube app, which already contains kind of multiple types of YouTube, is going to be split into two huge chunks: for kids, not for kids. For kids, not for kids. In addition, there will also be YouTube Kids. There will also be the mature content, which is 18 plus, and there are like gaming and music are also technically separate YouTube apps. There's like already a lot of different YouTubes, which is confusing. But just if you're thinking about YouTube generally, right, not the mature content that's age gated, age restricted, which is different than for kids or not for kids, right? So there's actually two different age settings on every video, which could be additionally confusing if you haven't been paying attention, that in addition to for kids, not for kids, there's also like for like ages 18 plus, not for ages 18 plus. So, right. But if you're in the sweet spot of targeting people 13 to 17, you're great. You're golden. Don't worry. But most of us, are somewhere on the other end of that needle. So 13, 12 and under, kids, whatever. So there will be for kids and not for kids. So basically there will be two whole separate types of YouTube starting in January. And if your videos have Lego in them, you should be in the for kids section because Lego is for children. And insert, clip of Will Ferrell's character in the Lego movie saying, actually, it's a interconnected building system. Yes, there's lots of adults who collect and play with Lego. I used to be one of them. I still have Lego. I just haven't done a lot with it in a while, as you've probably noticed from my lack of Lego videos on this channel. So, but it's just like Lego is for kids. It's as simple as that. If you think about who primarily buys and plays with Lego, it's kids. If you think about who Lego is marketed to primarily, it's kids. And even if you make Lego content that has mature themes, if you think about who's watching it, it's more likely kids than not kids. And I know lots of people are like, oh, well, I don't specifically target kids, but actually just by having Lego in your videos, you're kind of targeting kids because adults don't watch Lego content as much as kids do. And that doesn't, right? So, when I first heard about this, I was like, well, what is exactly the cutoff of whether my content is for kids or not for kids? If kids are 50% of my audience, does that mean it's for kids or not for kids? Because, that's not a majority. It's, it's kind of equal, 50-50. If kids are only 30% of my audience, what does that mean? If kids were 70% of my audience, what does that mean? And how do I even tell? Because YouTube can't acknowledge the existence of kids on its platform legally, right? Because of COPPA. So all of the demographic information I have as a YouTube starts at age 13 and goes up. So there is literally no category of age viewers on my data about my channel for people under the age of 13, even though we all know they're there. Super confusing and frustrating, right? All right. Anyway, comments. Yes, there were people over 13. But a lot of these comments on my video right now are even obviously from children because they're not commenting on the subject. They're just talking about Lego. Sorry, kids. This video is not for you. Most of my content is, but this video is not really for you. All right, where was I? Kids, content. Right, how do I know that my content is for kids? Okay, so I asked a former Lego employee, who I will not name, but y'all know who I'm talking about. When they worked for the Lego company, Lego does surveys, all the time, asking, oh, you bought a Lego product. Who was this Lego product for? Was it for a kid? Was it for yourself? Are you an adult? Blah, 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 blah. So they collect a lot of data on who's buying their products, what age they are. And so that's like a thing they know, is what percentage of their market is, adults buying for adults versus adults buying for kids or kids buying for kids, right? And the adults buying for adults, 5 to 8% of the market. That data is probably a few years old, which means let's round up and call it 10%. Say 10% of Lego's market is adults buying for adults. That means 90% is for kids. All right, they usually forget about TFOLs, teens who like Lego. So let's give teens another 10%, right? That's generous. 20% of the market is 13 or older. That means 80% of purchases of Lego are for somebody who is under the age of 13. So regardless of how your content thinks about Lego or positions Lego, Lego as a product, as a concept, is generally consumed by and produced for children. And even if you're talking about a set that says 16 plus or 12 plus, like, kids build sets that are above their age range, right? Like I did, my nephews do, like that is just true. So yeah, there's a huge adult market, right? There's lots of people who build and play and use Lego that are not kids, but generally in the world, Lego is for kids. Like all of Lego's, 90% of Lego's marketing reflects this too. It's not like they have a lot of adults playing with Lego in their commercials. Their ads are targeted towards kids, right? Like all this evidence that Lego is for kids. Okay, but even if I didn't have that evidence, right? I have a huge bulk of evidence on my YouTube channel of who watches my videos, right? Even accepting the fact that YouTube doesn't acknowledge the existence of people under the age of 13, right? Like if we look at comments on my channel, like a lot of them are clearly by children, right? Because the spelling is pretty terrible, right? There's not really good sentence structure. They're asking for things that really only mostly kids care about. Like if you just look at comments, you can see who your audience is. I've met fans in person over the decade. Yes, there are people above the age of 13 who watch my content or talk about it, but primarily my biggest fans are under the age of 13. Like, I know this, and it's true for your Lego videos too. Probably, right? I'm sure there's maybe like 10% of Lego channels out there that maybe really do primarily attract an older audience, but probably not. Just like Lego is for kids. It's really that simple. But like, I know people are going to try to like argue their way around it. So I'm going to try to explain this in as many ways as possible. Okay, so I looked up some statistics, right? If you look at the age breakdown of the entire population of the world, there's like all these buckets. Like, okay, how many people are under the age of 13? How many people are 13 to 18? You know, demographic breakdowns. Generally, about 20% of the world's population, or 20 to 30, let's say, is under the age of 13. I think it's a little lower in the United States. That's where it's closer to 20, and internationally it's probably closer to 25 to 30. Anyway, so let's assume 25% of people in the world are children under the age of 13. And then let's assume that if we knew our audience breakdown and we knew that our audience was maybe made up of 40% of kids and 60% of not kids, we would be like, oh, well, it's not a majority kids. However, right, kids are disproportionately represented in your audience. So if your videos were really like equally applied to all ages, then kids under 13 should only make up about 20% of your audience, right? Because that is how they're distributed in the world generally, that kids are about 20% of people in the world. But if your audience is 40% kids, that means kids are twice as likely than every other age demographic to watch your content, which means that your content is overwhelmingly for kids because it is disproportionately attracting that, even if they're not the majority of your audience, right? They don't have to be the majority to be really attracted and targeted and brought specifically. You've done a really good job of attracting kids if you're getting them at double the rate that they exist in the population. So, you know, that's how I've been thinking about it. Like, that was definitely one way of reframing this that got me to be like, oh yeah, like, even if kids aren't the majority of my audience, which I already know they are disproportionately my audience, and therefore my content is for kids. All right. So somebody is saying we should storm the YouTube headquarters and overthrow them. That is not the answer here. This is an FTC decision, not a YouTube decision. The FTC and YouTube agreed upon this, but really the FTC is the one in charge here. So if you are really concerned about how the FTC is choosing to implement COPPA in this situation, there's a link in the first comment in this video, and I'm going to pin that. I should pin that. Where you can go leave a comment for the FTC. So I know this video is kind of long and rambling, but there's just like so much in here to dissect and digest. So here's the thing. All right, so the FTC and YouTube in this settlement said that the FTC is now going to hold creators on YouTube liable for upholding COPPA, even though creators are not the ones collecting the data on children. That is what is actually illegal. YouTube would still be the one collecting the data, right? Like, that's the crazy thing here, is that It is YouTube collecting data indiscriminately that is actually the problem. But regardless of that, creators will be on the hook for YouTube's collection of data starting January 1st, 2020. And if your content is for kids, which Lego videos are, brick films are, set reviews are, tutorials on how to build things are, role plays, anything that has Legos as the primary focus. Yeah, I'm calling them Legos even. That's how much I don't even care at this point. If that is the focus of your videos, your videos are for kids. That's it. That's it. It's that simple. Mark your videos as for kids. Expect to lose a huge percentage of your revenue and, adjust. And it's frustrating. And you're probably angry and annoyed and scared and confused. I know, because I've been all of those things at different times over the past 18 months as this has unfolded for me. Like, if you haven't connected the dots yet, all of this stuff happened to me 2 years ago, basically. So back in November of 2017, there was a different YouTube Kids issue that came up that then meant that my ad rates dropped by 40% overnight without YouTube telling me. Sorry, Side Duck. Oh, I put Side Duck here because, like, this is all so frustrating, crazy making. It just makes you want to go like, Side Duck, right? That's like the only appropriately appropriate response. Anyway, so what happened is people realized that YouTube had terrible stuff on it and kids were watching that terrible stuff. There was a big article by James Brittle about terrible YouTube content that kids were watching. In response to that, a lot of advertisers pulled their ad revenue from YouTube, and then YouTube went and started enforcing a lot of its own policies finally and pulled down a lot of channels. And also it was at the point where like YouTube could no longer pretend that kids weren't a major part of the audience. So they took everybody who was in Google preferred kids and family and basically kicked out all the kids things, but kept like parenting type content in that. And so I was in Google preferred, so I was getting a really premium ad rate for 3 years, I think from 2014 to 2017. Then I got kicked out. It was at the point where I had gone full-time, made YouTube my full-time career, had a employee, had a separate studio, and then this change happened. YouTube didn't even tell me it happened. It took me months to realize what had happened. They wouldn't even acknowledge what had happened when I asked them what happened. And I had to change my entire life because of that, right? I used to have a studio outside of my apartment where all of my Lego was. I went in, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, made Lego videos, and, was doing well enough to have a health plan and an employee, and then all of that went away. Not all. I mean, I had to make a huge shift because of like one tiny change on the back end of YouTube, which they wouldn't even tell me they had done. Right? That happened to me. It was one of the most terrible things to ever happen in my entire life to me. Like, I've written about that in a lengthy article I can link to. I don't want to rehash it all here, but like that is why I went on a YouTube hiatus starting last year, 2018. I kind of disappeared from YouTube for 8 months because it had all, like, my entire business model, which was built upon ad revenue from YouTube, was kind of taken away from me. And then like I could no longer rely on money from YouTube to pay the rent, which is what I had been doing. And so I had to get a day job again and reevaluate my whole relationship with YouTube. And there are people out there right now who are going through that same thing, right? If you right now rely on ad revenue from YouTube to pay bills every month, and your content is mostly about toys or, Minecraft or Fortnite or anything else that's really for kids, that is going away. Like, you've got another month and a half of it, and then come January 1st, expect that most of that revenue will be gone, right? And maybe because personalized ads will go away on all for kids content, right? And if you think like, oh, well, I'll make not for kids content and say that my content is not for kids, that's not going to save you, because your entire history on YouTube has been making content that's generally for kids, and YouTube knows that, and your stuff is optimized for a specific audience. And so if you try to say that's not my audience, YouTube will say okay, and it'll put you in the not for kids part of YouTube, and then your actual audience of kids won't see your content, right? So that's like all these people who are like, well, I'll just be not for kids. Okay, if you were successful to like get into not for kids, you're still going to lose, right? This is not like there's a win scenario, right? You're gonna lose whether you mark your content for kids or you mark your content for not for kids, if your content is actually primarily consumed by kids, right? Because again, it doesn't matter if you think your content is not really for kids, unless it's really truly not in any way for children, in which case you should have stopped watching this video a long time ago. Sorry, Fruits Loves Legos said, sorry that happened. This is why you are further down the grief and acceptance road. We are just realizing that they are getting this. Yeah, no, I get it, right? Like, I had all of this happen to me back in 2018. April of 2018 is when I really realized what was happening on my channel and had to make all these massive changes and change my entire life. And I get that some of you are just doing it now. And the nice thing is that YouTube is telling you it's happening, and you have a month and a half to prepare. That's not a lot of time, but from my perspective, like, I would have loved to have advance notice from YouTube about what they did to my business, and been able to make changes in advance and still have a grace period. So I know it's terrible, and you're frustrated and scared and confused, and you have every right to feel all of those things, and they are absolutely valid, and you need to feel those things. And please give yourself time and space to feel all of that. But then you're going to need to make a business decision, right? Like, if you are running YouTube as a business and your content is for kids, right, you still need to make a business decision, right? You need to have your emotions and feel all of that and get it out and process it, all that great stuff. But then you also need to figure out, what am I going to do to pay the bills, right? And so if you've been paying attention to my channel, I have shifted the focus of my channel significantly in the last year, right? I don't really do that many Lego videos anymore. I've done a couple this year, but most of my videos have been live streams of me talking to other people who make content on the internet about issues that affect people who make content on the internet, because that is what I care about also. And then it's like all I've been able to really do and feel strongly about is helping people like me who relied on internet revenue, ad revenue, specifically from YouTube, to like figure out what they're doing and how to do it better and all that kind of stuff. So like, I am literally here right now for y'all, for those of you who are making money and rely on that money from YouTube. So please, if you are in that situation and need to think through that, please ask me questions in the comments now. Reach out to me using my email on my, about part of YouTube, all of that stuff. Like, I am literally here to help all of you, because I have been through this exact thing. Not this exact thing, but as close as you could possibly be. And like, I feel lucky that my channel got affected by this 18 months ago so that I was able to pivot and do all those things then, as opposed to now when it's really happening to everything. And like, YouTube in 2020 is going to be vastly different than the YouTube of the past 14 years. The entire history of YouTube. Like, this is a epoch defining event for YouTube. So if you weren't already convinced that this was a big deal and it's going to have massive ramifications and changes, like, please believe that now. I need to drink something. Can we do anything about this? DragonNet289 asks. You should absolutely leave a comment for the FTC. I pinned a comment under the video where you can go do that and tell them that it doesn't make sense for the FTC to hold creators liable for YouTube breaking the law, right? That just doesn't make sense. But that is what is happening, and we all have to deal with it. Austrian Lego fan says, I think we must sit out the next month and see what is going to happen to the revenue, etc. No. Right? Plan now for your business, assuming you are losing all of your YouTube ad revenue. If that is your only source of income right now, you need another source of income. You need that another source of income as soon as humanly possible, right? You need to be looking at job postings. You need to be updating your resume. You need to be looking at any possible way you can make money that is not YouTube ads. Maybe that's sponsored content on YouTube. Maybe that's, I don't know, what other ways to make money are there? Merchandise sales. Maybe that's Patreon. But usually it's going to be like shifting to a whole different job or business model. That's what I did. I went back to the digital advertising and marketing world and worked as a blog editor again for 8 months until my entire team got laid off. And then I had to reevaluate my entire life. And now I'm going to grad school for game design. And it's awesome. And I love it. And it's a whole new direction that I barely even talked about on this channel because, like, I don't have time for all of the stuff that is going on right now. But, I saw this happen this week and I was like, oh, it's all... Everybody is now catching up to where I've been for the last 18 months. So, like, I'm here for all of you now because, like... Martin Ferret is telling ALF to sell their Lego. I also started selling some of my Lego. Someone is saying we should move to Twitch. Okay, here's the other thing, right? So I'm specifically talking to Lego YouTubers today because that is the community who I know the best and who knows me the best and who is most likely to listen to me because my experience and advice is most relevant to you, right? I am one of the most successful Lego YouTubers to exist, right? Over 600,000 subscribers. I did it full time for a while. There's only maybe a dozen people in the world who have had that level of success specifically on YouTube with Lego, right? Jang Bricks is another one. And if you didn't watch Jang Bricks' video from 8 hours ago that was 30 minutes long where he talked about how you need to mark all your content as kids, watch that video if you need another person to tell you this is real and your content is for kids and that's the right move here. And so here's the thing, right? So if you are making money from YouTube on kids content, you should mark your videos for kids. And for probably the first 6 months of 2020, that means most of that revenue is going to go away. And if you're depending on that on a month-to-month basis, that's terrible. However, YouTube is going to improve its contextual ad sales team, which means the kinds of ads that could still show on kids' content will start to have higher RPMs. There will start to be more of them, and so like revenue will kind of go back up. It'll probably never really be what it is right now again, right? Like that is how ad stuff works. Like if you've paid attention to ad rates on YouTube over the last decade, they kind of slowly go down just over time. There's more content, there's more competition, things change, and like that trend is going to continue. So, and like also just like ad supported companies in general are incredibly volatile. Like journalism was a whole thing that was ad supported for decades, and then that collapsed. And journalism is still around, but it's very different than it used to be. And where did all that ad money go? Well, a lot of it went to YouTube. And now YouTube is changing, right? And, maybe TikTok is going to be getting that ad revenue. But, so now that the FTC has done this huge case against YouTube and will then prosecute creators on YouTube who don't comply with these new policies, that will then give them case law to then do the same thing to other platforms like Twitch or, TikTok or any place where it's clear that people are collecting data on children and that there's money involved, right? So even if you move to Twitch and you're still primarily a kids content person, right, this will happen to Twitch too. There is not going to be a space on the internet where you can profit off of children and collect data off of children that will not be affected by the FTC ruling here, right? Like this is the beginning of regulation and enforcement in this area, not the end. This is the tip of the iceberg, as they say. So if this is your business model, you should think about changing your business model. It's what I did. It's why historically I have been trying to diversify the ways I make money as a business. So YouTube income was a huge part of it, but I wrote a book and now I also have some book revenue, and that's why I have healthcare right now is because of my book. Thanks, book. It's the Lego animation book. Purchase it now. And it's why I do talks and presentations because I can sometimes get paid for that. And that's a source of income. It's why I did sponsored content. It's why I did the thing where I like client work, contract work. It's why I'm switching to a whole new industry, right? Because ad-supported content is very hard to get right. It's very volatile, and it's really hard to build a sustainable business around. Like people do it, but like really few people, and not like consistently for long periods of time. All right, let's see. Maniac for bricks. I definitely agree. Running from YouTube and uploading elsewhere is not going to solve anything, especially if the law is not exclusively made for YouTubers. People don't make money from their videos. That doesn't matter, right? Even if you don't advertise, data is still being collected on your videos, and your videos are for kids, right? So that's why this applies to anyone who makes Lego content. Market for kids. Feel bad about it. Be frustrated. Figure out what you're going to do about it, and then, move on. Why is YouTube changing? Why is YouTube changing? Because of the law. What do you recommend hobby YouTubers? So, like, you have to mark your content for kids if it's for kids. And that means you'll be in a whole separate part of YouTube that's for kids. But if your content is generally for kids, that's where you will want to be, because that's where the kids will be, right? And it's going to affect a lot of features on YouTube, right? For kids content will not have comments. You will not be able to save it to playlists. You will not have notifications. There's all these things, and like this is not the video to get an overview of those things. Like there's an official YouTube video on that, all that stuff, and it's gonna suck. It's gonna suck. Like what YouTube will be in 2020 is not what YouTube has been. And, you know, you'll have to decide, do I still want to do YouTube when it's like this? If I'm not getting the views I used to get, if I'm not getting viewer engagement. And, you know, there's ways to try and circumvent those things by having a mixed channel, right? My channel I'm going to be having as mixed because about 5% of my content is not for kids. Like the most recent videos, like this one or the Chicago Internet Creators, those are not for kids. And so I'll continue to make videos like that, and they're not for kids. And I know they're not for kids because kids comment, "This is boring, I'm going to stop watching." And I'm like, great, bye. Like, I'm not making it for you. So like you could literally make not for kids content and have a mixed channel and still be able to get comments, but you're not, right? Like the whole point of this is to stop collecting data on children. So if you try to still let children comment on your videos in some way or talk to you through a Discord server or any of those things, all you're doing is trying to find a loophole, which is still illegal. Right? Like, this is why every time I've run a contest on the channel, you know, I say, like, you have to be 13 or older to enter this contest, because I've known about COPPA for years, right? And I've done my best to comply with it whenever me personally, Brick101, is collecting data from a user, which is, you know, pretty rare. It was mostly when, like, McFarlane Toys was running those giveaways, and there was a sign-up form, and it's like, you have to be 13 to enter a contest. Right? Anytime I've run a contest, you have to be 13 to enter the contest. Those are the rules. Oh, here's some other reasons why I know that my audience is kids, right? So remember when I tried to make Lego Godzilla a Lego Ideas project? And despite the fact that that video got hundreds of thousands of views, and I have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and only got like 2,000 supporters on Lego Ideas, that's because Lego Ideas requires user to be 13, and most of my audience is obviously not 13 because they didn't support Lego Godzilla, right? Other ways I know my audience is mostly kids. The spikes on views on my channel, they spike after 3 p.m. on weekdays during the school year and on weekends during the school year. And then during the summer, it's kind of flat because kids are out of school and able to watch stuff whenever, right? That is not an adult viewing trend. So Brickhead family started cleaning out their non-kid friendly videos. They're switching to kid friendly. Gaming video channels are affected too. Absolutely. Gamer Who saying ironic that the adpocalypse prompted more channels to go family friendly, and now this. Yeah, no, it's definitely a threading the needle thing where you can't be too adult or too kid centric. Topple Not saying I have a lot of adult fans who watch and comment. Yeah, and right, you can still connect with your adult audience members through other social media, right? Like, that's another way I know that most of my YouTube audience is kids, is because my Twitter followings for Brick101, my Facebook followings for Brick101 have always been a tiny fraction of my YouTube thing, because kids are really not on Facebook and Twitter, right? That's just, they're not there because parents are better about keeping kids off of those things because they're very different types of services. So, right, like if you have communities in other places that are actually clearly adult communities, that's great. Those things are great, and I'm happy for you, and like you can still keep using those. Topplenot says, do I legally have to mark my videos as meant for kids? Or can I just say that they're not, and then whoever watches them is responsible for themselves? No, you legally need to mark your videos as for kids, right? This is not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. But yes, you are responsible, not viewers. Oh, wait, was Jang in the thing? Oh, yeah, and there's the Christmas drop that will compound the situation in January. Oh, I don't know. What questions do y'all have? This was long and rambling. Oh, Jangbricks is saying, oh yeah, that's definitely teens after 3 p.m. because Lego is mostly for teens and adults. I heard that on the internet. Yeah, me too. Okay, so, right, if you have a business that's based on YouTube advertising, here's the thought experiment I want you to do. What would you do if, starting in January, 50% of your YouTube ad revenue disappeared because of these changes? How much money would that mean for you per month? What are different ways you could supplement that, right? Think about that. Now think about, what if 90% of your ad revenue from YouTube disappeared because of this change? Because that's the range I'm thinking, that it's going to be between 50 and 90% of ad revenue initially. Maybe that'll come back over time, but at the start, it's going to be gone. And if you're relying on this month after month to pay bills like I used to be, right, it will be immediately unsustainable. So you need to start, maybe not today, maybe you're still just reeling from all of this, and you need to give yourself like the weekend to just process and feel and be angry at YouTube and be sad about how you're gonna lose your connection with most of your audience because they won't be able to comment on your videos. It's like it won't even be YouTube. Right? It will be YouTube, but it won't be YouTube anymore. So feel all of the anger and frustration and sadness and confusion, and then next week be like, all right, what am I gonna do? Right? We've got a grace period to actually go through, mark the videos, think, are any of my videos really clearly not for kids? If so, I'll do mix, and I'll mark, 5 to 10% of my content is not for kids. And I'll think about, do I want to make more of that content? Is that sustainable? All right. And then I'll assume that most of my revenue from for kids is going to disappear. And do I need that revenue? Is that happening? Right? And if you're not making revenue from YouTube, right? This is going to hurt, but it's not going to hurt in the same way where it literally destroys your life, right? This is going to destroy some people's lives. And I've been watching a lot of the commentary from other kid YouTubers. Oh, and also, if you are an actual child and you have a YouTube channel, then absolutely, one, you should not be having a YouTube channel unless your parents are managing it for you. And two, your content is for kids, right? If you are a kid making YouTube videos, by definition, you are a kid in a video, and therefore your content is going to be considered for kids, right? So Jang Brooks did a great job about talking about how no matter what the YouTube algorithm has determined your videos for kids or not for kids, don't read too much into that. That was a first pass of machine learning. And okay, so I have 600 videos. It marked 400 of them as for kids, right? That's a lot of my videos. What that means is that, yeah, it's mostly going to think my videos are for kids, and they are. Are there some more than that should also be marked for kids? Definitely. Are there maybe a couple places where it got it wrong? Absolutely. But don't analyze it too closely, because it's literally not made in a way humans can understand, because it was a computer that made that decision. And we are ill-equipped to understand the computer mindset. Just as humans, we're not good at it. I still haven't taken a drink of this thing that I opened 15 minutes ago. Maniac Brick says, has to go. Thanks for the discussion. Thanks for coming, Joey. Does this mean YouTube is ending? Not really. There'll still be YouTube. It's just going to be very different. It means YouTube is changing. Paganimation, for one, welcomes our new robot overlords. Me too. Humans had a good run, It's time for Skynet. Alana Brasher naively is asking, can we see some cool Legos? I'm sorry, I don't even have Legos in my house anymore, right? See, I've got that Star Wars Rogue One indestructible robot voiced by Alan Tudyk. That's Lego. This is Mega Constructs. This is about as much Lego that I actually have in my house anymore. Most of my Lego is in a storage unit because I lost the revenue that allowed me to have a studio for my Lego, and then I moved it back into my apartment. But then because of continuing life changes, because of the fallout of YouTube, we had to move to a smaller apartment that was more affordable, and I could no longer store my Lego in the apartment. So now it's in a storage unit down the street, and that's really depressing and demotivating, and oh my god. Like, it's hard to even convey to all of you what I have been going through for 18 months. Like, I am perversely happy that other people are finally going through it too, because now you'll all understand why my channel kind of stopped, right? Like, my channel still exists. I'm making a video right now. Hey, videos, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, it's not what it used to be, and it's never going to be that again. And I've said that before, and I'll say it again, because a lot of kids still haven't gotten the message. Maybe come January, it'll be really clear. I'm going to be focusing more on game content, because that's what I'm doing now. That's where my creativity has gone. And that's what's going to be on this channel. And I think the game content I'll be doing will be mostly not for kids, because it'll be really technical and behind the scenes. In my understanding of the demographic information I can see on my channel, those videos definitely attract a more age-diverse audience and not a disproportionately kids audience. Thomas Barker says you get demonetized for being family-friendly or not family-friendly. What are you meant to do if then there is no way out? Yeah, no, the goal is to be exactly targeted to the key age range of, like, you know, not kids, so adults, but not mature. So you really want to be like PG-13 is kind of like the golden area of YouTube, where it's not like so much cursing that you're R-rated and need to be marked as for mature, but it's not really kid-friendly. But that doesn't mean just make PG-13 like vocals on a Lego video. That's not going to save you. Like, the whole entirety of your content would need to be essentially PG-13 if we're using old, outdated terminology for how content is classified. But like, you know, things like how to fix your kitchen sink, that content is going to be fine, right? Like, really straightforward, like confrontational content, like Jimmy Fallon content on YouTube is going to be fine, right? It's not for kids, but it's not super edgy. It's just kind of fine, right? Like, that is the content that will continue to be fine. And there will be plenty of for kids content on YouTube. It's just mostly it'll be there from corporations who can afford to just put stuff on YouTube and not make ad revenue because they're Disney or Lego. It won't be from like independent people like me or Jang Bricks. And like, I know Jang is continued saying he's not going to change his content that much for the time being, but you know, who knows like what this is going to mean. Like, yeah, YouTube as we know it is ending. YouTube is changing. Does the FTC punish videos that are wrongly marked as child-oriented? You didn't. No, right? Like, that's the thing. If you mark your stuff as for kids, you're good. It doesn't matter if you mark it for kids, but it's maybe a little not for kids. That's not what they're looking, right? The issue is if you say it's not for kids, but kids are there, right? If you had a quadrant of like what you do versus what the audience does, maybe I should actually draw this. For kids, not for kids, not for kids. For kids, not for kids, not for kids, for kids. All right, so this graph, right? So if your audience is for kids and you mark your stuff as for kids, you're great. If your stuff is not for kids and you're not for kids, you're great. If your stuff is for kids and you mark it not for kids, you're in trouble. But if your stuff is not for kids and you mark it for kids, you're fine. It's just weird. But like this is, if you're choosing between this and this, you want to go with this one. This one is safer, right? You're not going to get a $42,000 per video dollar fine from the FTC if you mark your stuff for kids, but it's maybe not entirely for kids, right? That's the safe bet, right? If this is like a prisoner's dilemma game theory type situation. So what if you mark your video as for kids to be safe, but it ends up not being for kids? Will you still be in trouble? No, right? Because the problem was collecting data on children. And if you mark your stuff as for kids, there will be no data collected on it. Therefore, no legal violation. Somebody's going. Somebody else is... Oh, hey, Enzo, son of a pizza man. Do I have any cats or dogs? Yeah, I have a dog, Sophie. She's snoring in the background. Hey, YouTube should show plus 13 content if you log in. This could solve the problem. Yeah, there's lots of other ways this problem could have been solved, but none of them are what's happening. Like, I agree, there's so many ways this could have gone that would have been better. NBC says, I do hope people such as yourself are able to get back on your feet eventually. Yeah, I'm on my feet. Like, I'm doing okay. Like, I changed everything and now have a whole different direction, and I'm doing well now. Like, I had stress-induced chronic pain and still dealing with that because of everything that happened. Like, I, had terrible anxiety and depression and all of that stuff, but I'm doing all right now. Like, I've worked through a lot of stuff and I've chosen a new direction. And, like, ultimately, YouTube is just another thing, right? It's not that big of a deal that I don't do YouTube as much as I used to. I know that it's disappointing for a lot of you, and like YouTube is still a part of myself. Like, I built this over a decade, but I've moved on. Like, it's like I moved on from lots of jobs in my life. I've moved from different apartments. Like, change happens. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's, just kind of meh. This is going to be bad for a lot of people. I've already made the change. It was really hard. It was bad at the beginning, but now it's good, right? And so, I'm also here on the other side of like 18 months of like dealing with this and like shifting my life and like processing my grief over what I lost and, my self-blame over feeling like I did something wrong when it was really YouTube that did something wrong, and then I just like kind of got like hung up to dry, which is what's happening again here. And like those things still hurt at some level when I think about them, but I'm like in a much better place. And you can be too. It's going to take time. It's not going to be easy. But yeah, like you can't stop this change, right? This is bigger than you. This is bigger than YouTube, right? YouTube, not just meaning the company of YouTube, but YouTube as a collective ecosystem that all of us are a part of, right? Like, I helped build YouTube into what it is, right? My videos made YouTube money. They made me money and they made YouTube money. I made enough money to probably pay for an entire employee or two at YouTube's salary some years, right? Like, in addition to my salary, like, I did a lot as an entrepreneur to help make YouTube what it is. But YouTube is not going to continue to be what it is. So, like, I have stakes in this game in so many ways. And gosh, this is a rambling video. I can only imagine what somebody who like just used to watch my videos because like, oh, Five Nights at Freddy's is thinking watching this video if they're still watching an hour into it. But yeah, I don't have any cats. YouTube needs to hear our voice. YouTube doesn't need to hear our voice. No, Brother from Another Brick is saying, I'm going to rate my videos as targeted to adults. I hope a bunch of big toy YouTubers get together and protest it. No, do not do that. It will not work. This is not a YouTube thing that is happening. This is a legal thing from the government that is happening. And they have already decided what's going to happen. Your choice now is to comply or not to comply. Not complying is a bad choice. This is not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. This is just logic. Do not do that. Your content, if it is about toys, it is for kids. Even if adults consume your content too, disproportionately, it is children that are watching those videos. There's some gray areas. Jang also pointed out, even if you aren't monetized, this still affects you and you have to flag your videos appropriately. Oh, someone asked about Nightly News at 9 Chapter 3. Aw, that's so sweet. Yeah. My business model of this channel started out as being, I'm going to make Nightly News at 9, blah, 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 blah. That didn't work. I switched to how to build. That worked for a while. It doesn't work anymore. Nightly News at 9... I hope to continue someday. I don't know if it'll be in video form. Like, I'm making games now. Maybe I'll make a game that's set in the Nightly News at 9 universe that covers some of the territory Nightly News at 9 Chapter 3 would. Don't hold your breath waiting for it, but maybe in the next decade there'll be something in the Nightly News at 9 universe. That's about what I can say. Maybe Kevin Hinkle will help do art for it. Hi, Kevin. I don't think you're watching right now, but hi, Kevin. Martin Fair asking, so if we do write to the FTC, do we need to argue against the morality and usage of smart advertising? It's infringing on privacy, is apparently a threat to children. You can argue this however you think you should argue this. For me, what I'm going to say is it does not make sense for the FTC to go after YouTube creators for YouTube breaking the law. So I make content, video content. It is on YouTube. It is also on other platforms. It is on Epic, which is in elementary schools across North America. However, Epic is COPPA compliant. So my content being on Epic is not a problem for me or for Epic because they're complying with the law. YouTube was not complying with the law. That is a YouTube problem. So the mere concept of like going after the people who created kid-friendly content that YouTube allowed on its platform and monetized, rather than YouTube actually taking the time to put kid-centric content on YouTube Kids and disallowing it from the main YouTube app, which is what should have happened, right? That's like, that's like how this should have gone down, but it's not what happened, right? If I could travel to alternate dimensions, I would love to go to the dimensions where like this was handled differently and YouTube Kids had actually been a separate viable source of kids content and YouTube had been really restricted to non-kids content, and seeing how that would have gone, right? Especially if that had happened years ago and there'd been time for YouTube to really build up an advertiser base for YouTube Kids specifically, right? None of that happened, and now we're in this mess of a situation. And it doesn't make sense, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it doesn't make sense because it's the law and we still have to deal with it, right? It might be an unjust law. It might be unconstitutional. And maybe you want to argue those things and fight for those things. And if you have the money to mount a case against this and pay for really smart lawyers to, overturn the FTC's decision here, by all means, please do that. Like Dan, the Diamond Minecart TDM, he probably has the money to try and deal with this. But he is currently in denial that his content is for kids, and that is going to destroy him if he doesn't change his mind. But yeah, a couple days ago on Twitter, he's like, oh, I'm going to be fine. And I was just like, what? No. You are like the poster child for kid-friendly content on YouTube, and you absolutely need to mark your stuff as for kids to be safe. And like, yes, like mark your stuff for kids, and then also like mount a legal team to try and overturn this. And God, I wish the Internet Creators Guild had been successful and existed and could like advocate around this in any way, but it dissolved because it's so hard to get creators to coordinate on anything. And yeah, there's a union for YouTubers in Germany that's trying to form, but like, we're not actually YouTube employees, right? And if you think of yourself as a YouTuber and an employee of YouTube, you're not. You are a provider of content. YouTube is a platform that distributes content and has a whole bunch of terms and service. And you don't have to use YouTube, right? You choose to use YouTube, and therefore you have to comply with all of whatever YouTube is saying, right? YouTube owes you nothing aside from what it is bound to offer you because of the partner agreement. That's it. Martin Farrett is saying YouTube kids is a symptom of allowing smart advertising to exist, so smart advertising is still the problem. Like, sure, argue that, but like, good luck taking away the entire underpinnings of like modern marketing and revenue generation on the internet. Like, you are going against like all of Silicon Valley, who have a lot of money because they've been able to do this and therefore can lobby and all that stuff. So good luck. Like, I don't disagree with you that like advertising is deeply problematic in how it's currently implemented. But, right, like, I'm trying to say, what should you as a person who runs a YouTube channel do? Like, whatever larger argument you want to make about capitalism or, regulations around that and how the internet exists, like, that's a whole other thing we could talk about for years. All right, this has been a long stream. What does anybody else have anything they want me to talk about? Have I seen the new Steven Universe movie I can't spell because I'm a kid? Oh, you're so pure. Yes, I've seen the new Steven Universe movie. It's delightful. I made a community post about Spinel, which I built out of Lego. I haven't done a video on it because I moved and, she's in a bin in my storage unit somewhere and I don't know where. And I don't really do Lego videos anymore, but I loved the movie. I loved Spinel, and I made her out of Lego. PlushTube HD is saying, I'm trying to make a YouTube channel and grow, but now I won't have any comments. Yeah. No, it's always been hard to build a successful YouTube channel, and it's going to be even harder, right? Like, if you think YouTube is a viable career option, it's not. I mean, there is a small percentage of people who are able to build a successful business using YouTube. I am very lucky and privileged to have been one of them. But the ways that I did that are not going to be viable much longer. And so the type of content that will be successful on YouTube in the future is going to be vastly different than the content that has been successful. This means lots of YouTube channels that you know and love are going to stop making new content, are going to radically change the type of content they make. Like, this is going to have vast rippling effects across the ecosystem. And as I said before, it won't be limited to YouTube. So, right, like, this is going to come to Twitch too, eventually, right? It can't not. And Topplenot says big YouTubers will move to other countries to get around the law. That will not protect them. This is a United States government law But since YouTube is a United States-based company and pays people, even if they're in another country from the United States, they are still bound by United States law, even if they live in Sweden or wherever. So that is not an escape. This is not a thing you can logic your way around or sneak your way past. I'm sure there will be people who will continue to create content that is really for kids, market is not for kids, and not really get detected. But that is a small percentage, and it is a huge, huge risk you should not take. Again, this is not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. Have I said that enough? McClunky. That is the perfect way to end this stream. Thank you, Jang. McClunky. Okay, boomer. Do you think I'm a boomer? I'm a millennial. Okay. That was good. That was really cathartic for me to talk about this after so long of dealing with this kind of by myself. So again, I'm perversely happy that everybody else is finally in the boat I've been in for a long time, worried about the future of YouTube and the viability of kids content on this platform that I helped make a platform for kids content. And I know I need to do more stuff to kind of let my audience say goodbye to the old type of content before all of this really changes. I don't know what that means. This was just the video I needed to make this week because so many people have been talking about this and being so wrong. So thank you, Jang, for tweeting about this and really helping me feel confident in my read of the situation, because so much of what I was reading and seeing was so divorced from reality. Melissa Hunter, aka Mommy's World, has also been doing really good content about what this means and how YouTubers should react to this, and some other people. And there's a million different ways you could digest and think about this. My perspective is just one of them. I hope it was helpful, but again, the short, cut and dry piece here is that if you make content that is focused on Lego on YouTube, your stuff needs to be marked as for kids. That's it. Just do it. Hate it. Whatever. That's what you have to do. And, while we're in a grace period, take advantage of that. Have a fun end of YouTube comments on my channel, comment palooza, right? While the FTC is essentially looking the other way for the next month and a half. I don't think they're going to retroactively go back and say, oh, well, in this period where we said it was okay, you clearly knew that you were getting comments from kids. I don't think, it's pretty clear that you're good until January 1st, which again is a huge, wonderful, crazy thing that is happening, that the FTC and YouTube agreed upon this weird grace period that we're in. So take advantage of the grace period, but mark your stuff as for kids, and this is not legal advice. Thank you, Jang, for joining. You're welcome for hosting this. And who else does not like spiders? That's the question that Alana is leaving us all with. Good question. I'm kind of okay with spiders. Bye-bye.